Remember those vintage 10-minute recipes nobody eats anymore, the ones that saved hectic nights? They packed flavor and comfort into quick pans and warm kitchens. How did we let such easy, tasty magic slip away? Apricot Cottage Cheese Loaf offered a cool and creamy surprise that stood out among the many church picnic dishes of the 1960s. Slices of soft white bread were spread with a light mixture of whipped cottage cheese blended until smooth with a dash of sugar and a few drops of lemon for brightness. Sweet canned apricots were drained carefully, then chopped into small pieces and folded into the cheese to add a gentle fruitiness. Each slice was rolled tightly into a neat spiral, then wrapped in wax paper and chilled until firm. When unwrapped at the picnic, the loaf revealed beautiful golden swirls against the snowy filling, and each piece sliced cleanly without losing its shape. The taste balanced mild, tangy cheese with the soft sweetness of apricot, creating a refreshing bite that was neither too heavy nor too sweet for a summer afternoon. It traveled well in coolers packed with ice, making it a practical choice for long drives to countryside gatherings where families sang hymns and shared stories beneath tall oak trees. Children loved the bright colors, while adults enjoyed how this loaf brought a touch of elegance to the long wooden tables filled with beloved recipes passed from generation to generation. Pickled beet and apple sandwiches turned the picnic table into a canvas of vivid colors and flavors. Thin slices of sturdy rye bread were buttered lightly to prevent sogginess, then layered with ruby red pickled beets, whose tangy brine offered a burst of earthy sweetness. Tart apple rounds cut paper thin provided a crisp contrast, while a sprinkle of black pepper added gentle heat. When pressed together, these simple ingredients created a sandwich that was bright, juicy, and slightly unexpected. Church members who valued frugality loved this recipe because it made use of home-canned beets from last year's harvest and fresh apples from backyard trees. The striking pink juice often soaked into the bread, leaving a beautiful marbled pattern that children found fascinating, even if they approached the bold flavors with caution. Adults appreciated the balance of sweet and sour, along with the satisfying crunch that stood out amid the richer meats and casseroles. Served cool from wax paper packets, these sandwiches refreshed tired singers and hungry helpers after hours of setting up tables in the summer sun, and offered a reminder that a few honest ingredients can create something truly memorable. Coffee jelly. Sunday delivered a grown-up treat for those who wanted a gentle jolt of flavor between hymns and stories. Strong black coffee was brewed early in the morning, then sweetened just enough before gelatin was dissolved into the hot liquid and poured into glass dishes to set. By the time the picnic crowd gathered, the coffee had transformed into a smooth, shimmering jelly that held its shape when scooped. Cubes of the chilled jelly were spooned into tall cups and topped with a splash of cold evaporated milk, which added creamy richness without overwhelming the deep roasted flavor. Some cooks dusted the top with a hint of cocoa powder, while others left it pure and simple, allowing the bittersweet coffee to shine. Adults savored each spoonful, slowly enjoying the cool texture on a hot day, while children sometimes traded tastes for slices of cake or pie. The dessert was elegant in its restraint and surprisingly refreshing when eaten under the shade of churchyard trees, while gospel music floated through the warm afternoon air. Peanut butter stuffed dates were a small but mighty snack that offered quick energy for children racing across the picnic grounds. Plump pitted dates were split open and carefully filled with creamy peanut butter, whose salty richness balanced the natural caramel sweetness of the fruit. A light sprinkle of coarse salt or finely chopped roasted peanuts added crunch and kept the flavors lively. These little bites required no baking and could be prepared in minutes, which made them a favorite for busy church cooks already juggling dozens of dishes. The sticky sweetness clung to fingers and lips, and many children giggled as they tried to eat them neatly, while elders smiled at the familiar sight. Packed into wax paper-lined tins, they traveled perfectly and stayed fresh even in the summer heat. Adults appreciated how such a simple combination could provide lasting energy for long conversations and gospel singing deep into the evening. Every bite carried the warmth of home kitchens where mothers and grandmothers filled plates with love and thrift, turning everyday pantry staples into a treat worth remembering. Radish and butter tea sandwiches brought a cool garden freshness to the heavy tables of fried chicken and sweet cakes. Paper-thin slices of peppery radish were laid over squares of soft white bread, generously spread with creamy butter. A pinch of flaky salt highlighted the contrast between the mild richness of the butter and the crisp, sharp bite of the radish. These dainty sandwiches were cut into neat rectangles or triangles and stacked on china plates or simple enamel trays depending on the church's supplies. They provided a delicate counterpoint to the more filling picnic staples and reminded everyone of the season's first harvest from backyard plots. Children often reached for them out of curiosity and discovered a flavor that was both bright and satisfying. Because they could be prepared quickly and held well in the cool shade, they became a dependable offering at many gatherings. Their simplicity captured the essence of the era when garden vegetables and homemade bread were celebrated as everyday gifts to be shared in fellowship and gratitude. Cold spaghetti omelet transformed yesterday's dinner into a surprising lunch treat that delighted thrifty church cooks. Leftover spaghetti, often sauced lightly with tomato, was folded into beaten eggs, seasoned with black pepper and a touch of grated cheese, then poured into a hot skillet. As it cooked, the pasta strands settled into a golden crust while the eggs puffed gently around them. The omelet was flipped once to achieve a crisp exterior and a tender interior that sliced easily into wedges. Served at room temperature, it traveled well and stayed tasty even after hours on the picnic table. This dish reflected the inventive spirit of home cooks who refused to waste a single noodle and proved that a satisfying meal could come from simple leftovers. Children enjoyed the playful texture, while adults appreciated the hearty flavor that paired perfectly with fresh greens or sliced tomatoes from the church garden. It stood as a testament to resourcefulness and the belief that no blessing, however small, should ever be thrown away. Cucumber and mint cream cheese boats offered a cool escape from the summer heat. Large cucumbers were halved lengthwise and carefully scooped to form shallow boats ready to cradle a refreshing filling. Cream cheese was whipped until soft, then mixed with finely chopped fresh mint, a splash of lemon juice, and a pinch of salt. The smooth mixture was spooned into the cucumber shells and chilled until firm enough to slice into neat sections. Each bite combined the crisp snap of the cucumber with the creamy tang of the cheese and the bright fragrance of mint. These boats added a burst of green color to long tables covered with pies and fried meats, and they stood out as a light option amid the heavier fare. Children liked the fun shape, while adults savored the cooling freshness on a hot afternoon of music and fellowship. They embodied the ingenuity of picnic cooks who used garden produce and simple dairy to create a dish that felt elegant yet entirely homemade. Orange gelatin soufflé cups brought a cheerful glow to every picnic spread. Instant pudding was whipped together with gelatin and a splash of fresh orange juice until it became light and airy. The mixture was poured into individual cups and chilled until softly set, forming a dessert that looked like a true soufflé, but required no oven at all. When served, the cups revealed a pale orange hue and a delicate citrus scent that lifted spirits on even the warmest days. Topped with a dollop of lightly sweetened whipped cream, they offered a smooth, creamy bite that melted instantly on the tongue. Churchgoers admired how quickly these treats could be prepared while still looking fancy enough for a special gathering. Children loved the bright color and gentle wobble that made each spoonful fun, while adults found the flavor refreshingly light after a plateful of savory dishes. This dessert proved that with a few pantry staples and a bit of creativity, even the simplest recipe could bring joy to a crowd gathered in faith and friendship. Bologna and grape jelly bites were a playful mix of sweet and savory that often surprised newcomers but quickly won them over. Thin slices of bologna were spread lightly with grape jelly rolled into tight spirals and secured with wooden toothpicks. The salty meat paired unexpectedly well with the fruity sweetness, creating a bite that was both nostalgic and exciting. These little rolls were easy to make in large batches and packed neatly into tins for travel. Children were especially drawn to their shiny purple centers and fun presentation, while adults found the combination oddly addictive once they gave it a try. They fit perfectly alongside other finger foods like deviled eggs and cheese cubes and brought a flash of color to the buffet table. This dish captured the resourceful nature of home cooks who blended humble ingredients into something festive and memorable that sparked conversation long after the last hymn faded across the sunny churchyard. Cornflake peanut clusters delivered a satisfying crunch that ended many picnics on a sweet note. Cornflakes were poured into a wide bowl, while peanut butter, sugar, and a splash of milk were heated together on the stovetop until smooth and bubbling. The hot mixture was poured over the cereal and stirred quickly to coat every flake before being dropped by spoonfuls onto wax paper. As the clusters cooled, they hardened into golden mounds that held their shape even in the warm afternoon sun. Each bite combined the nutty richness of peanut butter with the crisp texture of cornflakes, making them an instant favorite for children and adults alike. Because they required no baking and very little time, they became a go-to recipe for busy church members preparing food for large gatherings. The clusters could be made hours ahead and stayed fresh in simple tins, waiting to be shared after long conversations, hymns, and laughter beneath the shade of spreading oak trees. Frosted pineapple rings were the kind of cheerful dish that caught every eye on a church picnic table in the 1960s. Thick, golden slices of canned pineapple were drained and patted dry before being chilled on a wide platter. A creamy mixture of softened cream cheese whipped with powdered sugar and a drop of vanilla was then piped or spooned into the center of each ring, forming a snowy crown that contrasted beautifully with the bright fruit. Some cooks added a cherry on top for a pop of red, while others sprinkled finely chopped pecans to give a delicate crunch. The sweet tart pineapple paired perfectly with the tangy cream cheese, making each bite a refreshing balance of flavors. Because the ingredients were inexpensive and easy to find year-round, these rings became a reliable favorite for large gatherings. They held up well in the summer heat and stayed cool inside picnic baskets packed with ice, offering a sweet treat that required no baking and almost no time. Guests often reached for them first, drawn by their glossy shine and promise of bright tropical flavor amid a spread of hearty casseroles and smoky barbecue. It was a simple dessert that tasted like sunshine and fellowship. Vinegar Pie Sipper brought the spirit of frugality to the picnic in a surprisingly refreshing drink. This old-fashioned recipe started with a tangy syrup made by simmering cider vinegar with lemon peel and sugar until it thickened into a golden concentrate. Once cooled, the syrup was mixed with cold well water or chipped ice to create a drink that tasted like the sweet tart filling of a lemon pie. Some church cooks added a dash of nutmeg or cinnamon to give it a warm depth, while others left it pure and bright. It was served in simple mason jars or paper cups and offered an alternative to the usual sweet tea. The drink shocked newcomers with its first sip, tart enough to wake the senses yet soothing on a humid afternoon. It reminded everyone that ingenuity could turn pantry staples into something memorable and thirst-quenching. Children often puckered and laughed at the sharpness, while elders smiled, recalling how such recipes stretched budgets and lifted spirits during harder times when nothing could be wasted and every gathering celebrated resourcefulness. Quick brown butter popcorn transformed an everyday snack into something worthy of a special church outing. Fresh popcorn was popped in a heavy stovetop pan until every kernel burst into a fluffy cloud. Meanwhile, butter was melted slowly until it turned a deep, nutty brown, releasing an aroma that drew children and adults alike to the kitchen door. The hot popcorn was tossed in the fragrant butter and dusted with a generous spoon of sugar, which caramelized slightly on the warm kernels, coating them in a delicate sweet crust. Some cooks added a pinch of salt to sharpen the flavor, while others relied solely on the natural sweetness of the browned butter. Served in paper cones or simple bowls, it filled the air with a rich, toasty scent that mingled with the smoke of outdoor grills and the sound of gospel singing. This treat required only a few ingredients and a few minutes, yet it felt indulgent and festive, reminding everyone that a little care in the kitchen could elevate even the most ordinary pantry staples into something worth sharing under the open sky of a summer picnic afternoon. Oyster Cracker Scramble offered a clever way to stretch a few eggs into a filling dish for a crowd. A skillet of butter was heated until foamy, then handfuls of plain oyster crackers were tossed in to soak up the flavor and toast lightly. Beaten eggs were poured over the crackers and stirred gently until just set, the crackers softening slightly while still holding a bit of crunch. A sprinkle of black pepper and a dash of milk gave the scramble a comforting richness without the need for extra cheese or meat. It was quick enough to make on a camp stove or church basement hot plate, which made it ideal for early morning preparations before the congregation arrived. Served with sliced tomatoes or fresh fruit, it provided a hearty breakfast or midday snack that tasted far more luxurious than its humble ingredients suggested. Families appreciated how far a carton of eggs could go when combined with a simple box of crackers, proving once again that frugal creativity brought people together over meals that nourished both body and spirit. Ginger ale, ice cream float pie turned a favorite soda shop treat into a picnic-ready dessert. A graham cracker crust was pressed firmly into a pie pan and chilled while vanilla ice cream softened slightly on the counter. The ice cream was then mixed with bubbly ginger ale until smooth and lightly frothy, creating a creamy filling with a gentle spice and fizz. This mixture was poured into the crust and left to firm in the icebox until ready to serve. Just before cutting, a thin layer of whipped cream was spread across the top and sprinkled with crushed ginger snaps for extra crunch. Each slice tasted like an old-fashioned float, cool and sweet with a hint of ginger warmth. Because it required no baking and could be prepared hours ahead, it became a go-to dessert for hot summer gatherings. Children loved the effervescent flavor, while adults appreciated the nostalgic nod to soda fountain days. It captured the playful side of church picnics, where families mingled under the trees and every dish held a touch of celebration. Water chestnut bacon wraps brought a surprising crunch to the picnic table. Whole canned water chestnuts were drained and patted dry, then wrapped in strips of smoky bacon secured with wooden toothpicks. Each bundle was brushed with a light glaze of brown sugar and soy sauce before being broiled until the bacon turned crisp and caramelized. The result was a savory sweet bite with a satisfying snap at the center. These little morsels were perfect finger food, disappearing quickly from platters as children and adults alike reached for seconds. They traveled well and could be served warm or at room temperature, making them ideal for outdoor gatherings where timing was unpredictable. Their mix of textures and flavors delighted guests who might not have expected such a modern-tasting treat at a church picnic. The recipe showed how 1960s cooks blended pantry staples with global influences, turning simple ingredients into something exciting and memorable that encouraged conversation and friendly competition for the last piece. Prune and walnut pinwheels combined natural sweetness with hearty texture in a cookie that seemed far fancier than its humble origins. Pitted prunes were simmered briefly and mashed into a smooth paste, sweetened with a touch of honey and a splash of lemon juice. Chopped walnuts were stirred in for a pleasant crunch. This filling was spread across a sheet of tender pastry dough which was rolled tightly into a log and chilled until firm. Slices were cut into neat spirals and baked until golden brown, filling the air with a warm, fruity aroma. The finished pinwheels offered a balance of rich nuts and mellow fruit that paired beautifully with coffee or sweet tea. They packed well in tins lined with wax paper and stayed moist even after a day in the summer heat. Elders appreciated their old-world flavor, while younger guests enjoyed the pretty swirls and chewy bite. These cookies represented the care and creativity of home bakers who turned simple dried fruit and pantry staples into something elegant enough for any church gathering. Tomato and peanut soup brought a hearty yet thrifty option to the meal. Canned tomato soup was heated slowly with a spoonful of creamy peanut butter stirred in until it melted into a silky base. A pinch of cayenne or black pepper added gentle heat, while chopped onions or celery provided texture. The combination created a surprising depth of flavor, bright tomato balanced by the nutty richness of peanuts, that felt both comforting and exotic. This soup could be served hot on cool evenings or chilled for a refreshing lunch, making it flexible for year-round gatherings. It stretched ingredients beautifully, feeding many with just a few pantry staples, which made it a favorite among church cooks, mindful of budget and time. Served with crusty bread or simple crackers, it provided a protein boost that sustained singers and storytellers well into the evening. Guests often asked for the recipe, amazed at how two everyday ingredients could create something so unique and satisfying while reflecting the ingenuity of African American kitchens. Maple-flavored sweet potato cakes filled the air with the scent of warm syrup and earthy roots. Instant mashed sweet potatoes were combined with a splash of milk, a dusting of cinnamon, and a drizzle of maple flavoring to form a smooth batter. Small scoops of this mixture were dropped onto a hot griddle and flattened gently with the back of a spoon. Within minutes, the cakes developed a golden crust while remaining tender inside. A quick brush of melted butter and a second drizzle of maple syrup created a glistening glaze that caught the afternoon sunlight. These cakes were hearty enough to serve as a main dish or as a sweet side alongside fried chicken and collard greens. Children loved their pancake-like texture, and adults appreciated how fast and affordable they were to make. They proved that even instant ingredients could become something special when guided by skilled hands and a desire to nourish a community gathered in faith and fellowship beneath the wide blue sky of a summer afternoon. Horseradish gelatin squares provided a bold finish that sparked conversation long after the last hymn. Lemon gelatin was prepared according to package directions, then blended with finely grated horseradish and a touch of vinegar while still warm. The mixture was poured into a shallow pan and chilled until firm, then cut into tidy squares that shimmered like amber glass. The first bite delivered a sweet citrus start, followed by a sudden rush of heat that cleared the sinuses and surprised unsuspecting guests. Often served alongside cold meats or seafood salads, these squares balanced richness with an invigorating kick. They traveled well in coolers and remained firm even on hot days, making them practical for outdoor gatherings. Some churchgoers approached them with caution, but quickly grew fond of their lively flavor, appreciating how they awakened the palate after a table filled with hearty fare. This dish showcased the adventurous spirit of 1960s church cooks who were never afraid to experiment and bring a spark of excitement to traditional picnic spreads. Soda Pop Pound Cake Cups turned an ordinary boxed mix into a church picnic marvel that delighted every sweet tooth in the crowd. Home bakers poured orange soda straight into yellow cake batter, skipping milk or water, which gave the cupcakes a fragrant citrus lift and a tender crumb that stayed moist for hours. The carbonation worked magic in the oven, creating a light, airy texture, while the soda's sugar deepened the golden color of the crust. Each cupcake baked quickly in paper liners so they could be passed around to children running barefoot across the grass or packed into baskets without worry. A thin glaze of powdered sugar and a few spoonfuls of the same soda finished them off with a bright, sticky sheen that caught the sunlight and made them shine. Guests were amazed at how a single bottle of soda transformed a humble mix into something worth writing down. And cooks loved how easy it was to prepare large batches when time was short, and the fellowship hall was already buzzing with music and laughter. These little cakes were proof that a playful idea and a splash of soda could turn a simple treat into a memory of summer joy and community spirit. Raspberry vinegar. Spritzer refreshed thirsty guests with a balance of sweet fruit and tangy bite that felt both old-fashioned and new. Church ladies steeped fresh raspberries in cider vinegar and sugar for several days, creating a ruby-red shrub syrup that sparkled like stained glass in the sunlight. When picnic day arrived, they strained the mixture and poured it over tall glasses of crushed ice, then topped each serving with cool well water or fizzy mineral water. The first sip was brisk and lively, tart enough to wake the senses yet mellowed by the natural sweetness of the berries. Children loved the jewel color, while adults appreciated how the drink cut through the richness of fried chicken and buttery casseroles spread across the tables. Because it required only a few ingredients and could be made well ahead, it became a trusted recipe for gatherings where people lingered for hours in the summer heat. It carried the gentle memory of colonial shrubs and old kitchen wisdom, a link between generations that reminded everyone how simple ingredients could create something remarkable and worth passing on with pride. Buttermilk and cornflake smoothie surprised everyone with its creamy tang and subtle crunch, a quick breakfast drink that traveled easily to an early morning picnic. Tangy buttermilk was poured into a tall glass blender with a drizzle of honey, a pinch of nutmeg, and a handful of crisp cornflakes. As the blade spun, the cereal softened slightly, yet left tiny flecks that gave each sip a playful texture. Some cooks added ripe banana or a splash of vanilla for extra body, while others kept it plain to let the buttermilk shine. Served in chilled mason jars, the smoothie offered a nourishing start that felt like a cross between a milkshake and a classic Southern cereal bowl. Children delighted in the gentle sweetness and the faint crunch that lingered after every gulp. It was a clever way to stretch pantry staples and make something special when time was short and the churchyard was already filling with song. Long after the jars were empty, people remembered that simple blend of tangy dairy and golden cereal as proof that even breakfast could be turned into a festive drink for friends and family. Cottage cheese snowballs brought a cool touch of sweetness to tables already heavy with pies and cobblers. Soft cottage cheese was whipped with powdered sugar and a dash of vanilla until smooth, then rolled into bite-sized spheres that were chilled until firm. Each ball was rolled in a blanket of fine coconut flakes, transforming them into snowy little treats that glistened under the picnic shelter lights. Some cooks tucked a hidden cherry or pecan half inside for a surprise bite, while others left them pure and creamy. They required no baking, no stove, and barely any cleanup, making them ideal for busy church ladies preparing for a crowd. Children loved the way the coconut stuck to their fingers, and adults appreciated the not-too-sweet flavor that paired well with coffee or iced tea. Packed in wax paper-lined tins, the snowballs stayed cool for hours, even on hot afternoons, offering a refreshing finish after plates of fried chicken and potato salad. Each bite felt like a small celebration of simplicity, proof that a few humble ingredients could create a memorable dessert with both charm and comfort. Pickled watermelon rind. Relish turned what many would throw away into a bright, tangy condiment that lifted every sandwich on the table. After the sweet red fruit was eaten, the firm white rinds were peeled, cubed, and simmered with vinegar, sugar, mustard seeds, and a pinch of cinnamon until they softened, yet kept a pleasant bite. The mixture was packed into jars and chilled, developing a flavor that balanced sweet and sour with a whisper of spice. On picnic day, it was spooned over pulled pork sandwiches, spread across hot biscuits, or served alongside fried fish, where its crispness cut through the richness perfectly. Elders smiled, remembering how this recipe saved money and honored a tradition of wasting nothing, while younger guests were amazed that something so flavorful could come from what most considered scraps. Its bright yellow-green color and lively taste made it a star of the condiment table and a story every cook was proud to share. This relish captured the resourceful spirit of the 1960s church kitchen, where creativity and care transformed humble leftovers into something truly delicious. Chocolate potato candy fascinated guests who could not believe that mashed potatoes could hide inside such a decadent sweet. Leftover potatoes were mashed smooth and combined with cocoa powder, butter, and powdered sugar to form a pliable dough that was rolled into logs or pressed into small squares. The mixture set quickly and sliced clean, revealing a rich chocolate flavor with a subtle earthy depth. Some cooks added chopped nuts or coconut for extra texture, while others drizzled a thin glaze of melted chocolate to create a glossy finish. This candy required no baking and made use of ingredients already in most kitchens, proving that a touch of imagination could turn everyday staples into a treat fit for a celebration. Children were delighted by the story behind it, and adults enjoyed the surprising moistness that kept each bite tender even in the summer sun. It became a treasured recipe to share among friends, a reminder that thrift and creativity often lead to the most memorable flavors on a crowded picnic table. Savory banana croquettes surprised picnic guests with a mix of gentle sweetness and light savory notes that turned a humble fruit into something remarkable. Ripe bananas were mashed with a pinch of salt and black pepper, then blended with fresh breadcrumbs and a spoonful of minced onion for a subtle bite. Small ovals were formed by hand, rolled in more crumbs, and fried in a shallow skillet until each croquette turned golden and crisp. The coating stayed delicately crunchy while the center remained soft and naturally sweet, a contrast that paired beautifully with roasted meats or a spoonful of spicy relish. Served warm on simple plates, these croquettes invited conversation as everyone tried to guess the unexpected ingredient hidden within. They proved that a common fruit could shine as a savory dish when seasoned with care, showing the creativity of church cooks who were never afraid to mix the familiar with the surprising to feed a joyful crowd. Quick carrot marmalade captured the brightness of citrus and the earthy sweetness of carrots in a jam ready before the choir finished rehearsal. Finely grated carrots simmered with fresh orange juice, a ribbon of lemon zest, and plain sugar in a heavy pot until the mixture thickened into a glossy spread. A whisper of ginger or clove added gentle spice, while the natural pectin in the carrots gave the marmalade a satisfying body without extra effort. Spread across hot biscuits or spooned over simple pound cake, it brought a lively splash of sunshine to every bite. The bright orange color shone like stained glass in jars, making it as pretty as it was flavorful and earning admiring glances from the dessert table. Because it used inexpensive ingredients and required less than an hour, it quickly became a favorite among busy picnic planners. Guests loved how it brightened the menu and added a tangy note that balanced fried foods, preserving the memory of summer gardens in one easy recipe. Eggnog salad. Dressing added a festive sparkle to the picnic table even beneath a blazing summer sun. Store-bought eggnog was whisked with cider vinegar, a spoonful of smooth Dijon mustard, and a drizzle of golden honey to create a creamy dressing with subtle holiday spice. Poured over crisp garden greens, sliced apples, or a simple fruit salad, it coated every bite with gentle sweetness and a soft nutmeg fragrance. The vinegar's sharpness balanced the richness, giving a flavor both celebratory and refreshing. Because it required no cooking and only a few pantry staples, the dressing came together in moments, making it ideal for last-minute gatherings when the fellowship hall was already humming with music. Elders smiled at the nostalgic taste of winter, while children enjoyed the dessert-like twist that turned plain vegetables into something special. This clever recipe proved that even a seasonal drink could be reimagined into a bright summer dish, extending holiday cheer to a sunny afternoon of fellowship and song. Graham cracker icebox eclairs offered cool, creamy comfort without a minute near the oven. Layers of crisp graham crackers alternated with thick vanilla pudding in a deep dish, each layer absorbing flavor as the dessert rested in the refrigerator until perfectly set. A shiny chocolate glaze poured over the top created a beautiful finish that sliced neatly into cake-like squares, soft and luscious even on the warmest afternoon. The crackers mellowed to a tender texture that mimicked the pastry of a classic eclair, while the pudding stayed rich and smooth. Because it could be prepared the day before, it became a dependable favorite for busy church cooks juggling multiple dishes and hungry guests. Children loved the glossy chocolate topping and adults appreciated the nostalgia in every bite. Each cool slice carried the taste of thoughtful planning and shared tradition, ending the picnic on a sweet note that encouraged everyone to linger a little longer beneath the shade trees after the last hymn faded. Grapefruit broiled with brown sugar was the 1950s version of classy. There was something about taking a humble fruit, adding a spoonful of brown sugar, and sliding it under the broiler that just made it feel elevated. This was not about sweetness. It was about ritual. Housewives would slice a grapefruit in half, loosen the segments with a serrated knife, sprinkle on the sugar, and broil it just long enough to caramelize the top. The result was part breakfast, part showpiece. You would serve it warm, on a proper saucer, maybe with a sprig of mint if you were feeling fancy. It showed up at brunches, bridal showers, or special breakfasts when the in-laws were in town. For kids, it was a little sour, a little sweet, and a lot of spectacle. For adults, it felt like something from a hotel menu, without ever leaving the house. Grapefruit might not be the go-to fruit today, but in the 1950s, it was breakfast with a wink and a little flame. Jelly roll-ups on white bread were the quick breakfast treat every kid from the 1950s to the 70s knew by heart. You would flatten a slice of white bread, spread on a little jam, roll it up tight, and slice it into pinwheels. Breakfast was done in under 10 minutes, fun to eat, and easy enough that even kids could make their own. Families leaned on meals like this when mornings were rushed, but you still needed something sweet to start the day. It was a trick you would find in lunchbox guides, homemaker columns, and those old spiral-bound cookbooks hiding in every kitchen drawer. Some folks added peanut butter, others kept it plain with jelly. But either way, it turned bread and jam into a quick, cheerful breakfast that actually stuck with you. Somewhere along the way, roll-ups disappeared under cereal boxes and toaster pastries. But back then, it was one of those small, forgotten meals that made mornings just a little brighter. Egg and olive sandwiches were the kind of bold move you either cherished or avoided. Chopped hard-boiled eggs mixed with sliced green olives and a spoonful of mayonnaise made for a salty, tangy, creamy spread that hit your mouth with flavor right away. It was not gentle. It was not trying to blend in. And it absolutely was not for everyone. But if you liked it, you were loyal. The eggs brought richness. The olives added snap and bite. The mayo held it together like a handshake between old friends. Served on rye, wheat, or soft white bread, it was the kind of sandwich that said someone had made it by hand. Someone who knew their way around a kitchen and was not afraid of strong flavors. These sandwiches came from a time when food did not shy away. It made its presence known. You rarely see them now, outside of old cookbooks or church luncheons. But back then, they were a lunchtime statement. You might get teased, or you might get admired. Either way, you never forgot it. The Elvis sandwich is more than just a quirky snack. It's a piece of pop culture history. Legend has it, Elvis Presley adored this decadent combination. Peanut butter, ripe banana, and crispy bacon layered between slices of white bread. Some say it must be pan-fried in butter until golden and melty. Others swear by the raw version, eaten cold in the dead of night. Either way, it's not exactly health food, it's more of a fever dream. This sandwich is sweet, salty, creamy, and crunchy all at once, much like the king himself. It became a symbol of indulgence, a recipe so outrageous it could only belong to someone larger than life. Fans have recreated it for decades, sometimes adding honey, sometimes toasting it, but always treating it like an edible homage. It's not just about flavor, it's about nostalgia, rebellion, and letting your taste buds run wild. The Elvis sandwich is one of those rare things you try once as a joke and then crave when nobody's watching. Just don't ask your doctor what they think about it. Fish stick. Po' Boy brought a taste of the Gulf Coast to busy kitchens using only what sat in the freezer. Packaged fish sticks baked or pan-fried until their coating turned golden and crunchy, while soft sandwich rolls warmed in the oven. Tartar sauce was stirred together with chopped pickles, a squeeze of lemon, and a little mustard, filling the kitchen with a tangy scent. Shredded lettuce and thin tomato slices waited on the counter, ready to add freshness and color. As soon as the fish sticks finished, they were stacked inside the rolls, drizzled with the cool sauce and topped with the crisp vegetables. The contrast of hot, flaky fish and chilled toppings tasted like a seaside lunch, even on a weeknight far from the water. In less than 15 minutes, a handful of inexpensive ingredients became a meal that felt special, making families forget how quickly it came together. Every crunchy bite delivered the carefree feeling of a coastal vacation without leaving the house, a reminder that a freezer staple can still capture the spirit of a faraway kitchen when imagination and hunger meet. The loose meat sandwich is like the Sloppy Joe's tidy cousin. It skips the sweet tomato sauce and gets straight to the point. Seasoned ground beef crumbled and piled onto a soft hamburger bun. No binding agent, no fillers, just beefy goodness. This sandwich was made famous by made-right diners in the Midwest, where regulars would sit at Formica counters, watching steam rise from griddles. It's the kind of sandwich you eat leaning forward, elbows on the table, catching the loose bits before they hit your lap. Often dressed up with mustard, pickles, and onions, it's simple, filling, and oddly comforting in its messiness. There's something about the way it falls apart in your hands that makes it feel honest. Unpretentious food for unpretentious people. If you grew up anywhere near Iowa or Illinois, chances are you had one of these after Little League or in a small-town diner with a checkered floor and a waitress who called you hun. The loose meat sandwich never tried to be cool. It just stayed dependable. Peanut butter and bacon sandwiches were the rebels' lunchbox choice. Salty, sweet, and totally indulgent. It started with a thick layer of peanut butter on bread, just like any normal day. But then came the twist. Crispy bacon strips laid on top, adding crunch, salt, and a smoky flavor that transformed everything. It felt like a dare, like breakfast and lunch had collided in the best way possible. The sandwich was sticky, crispy, and rich, a flavor explosion that made plain sandwiches seem like background noise. Some kids loved it instantly. Others needed convincing. But if it ever showed up in your lunchbox, you remembered it. Bacon added heft. It made the peanut butter feel more like a meal. And that sweet, salty contrast stuck with you long after the sandwich was gone. These days, it is more likely to show up on gourmet menus than cafeteria trays. But it started right here, between two slices of white bread packed with a paper napkin and eaten with a grin. Maple syrup toast with warmed butter was the farmhouse kitchen's answer to rushed mornings when breakfast still needed to feel comforting, even if the fridge was nearly bare. You would toast a slice of bread, slather on warm butter, and drizzle real maple syrup over the top. That was it. Sweet, buttery, and ready in under 10 minutes. Families loved it because it was practical, made from pantry staples, and good enough to carry you through a long morning of chores, school, or factory work. Some folks added cinnamon, others kept it plain, but either way, it turned toast into something that felt a little indulgent. You could find versions of this in old rural cookbooks, passed down through generations of families who knew how to stretch groceries without cutting corners on comfort. Somewhere along the way, breakfast like this disappeared under the weight of boxed cereals and fast food menus. But back then, it was one of those quiet meals that actually made mornings bearable. Funny how something so simple could be so easy to forget. Peanut butter toast with sliced apples was the picture of modern efficiency in the mid-century kitchen. Magazines and nutrition guides at the time were filled with advice on how to build a balanced breakfast. And this little combo checked all the boxes. Whole grain toast if you had it, white bread if you did not, topped with a swipe of peanut butter and a few thin slices of apple. Quick to make, packed with protein and sweet enough to keep the kids quiet for a few minutes. The apples added crunch and brightness, while the peanut butter gave it enough heft to hold you through school or work. Some families added a drizzle of honey, others a sprinkle of cinnamon, but even plain, it was satisfying. It was the kind of breakfast that made people feel like they were moving into a new, better era, something faster, cleaner, and smarter. If you were trying to stretch groceries or just keep up with the times, peanut butter and apples were your allies. Cinnamon toast with broiler crisp was one of those forgotten 10-minute breakfasts that once felt fancy, even though it came straight from the bread box. You would take a slice of white bread, butter it generously, sprinkle it with sugar and cinnamon, and slide it under the broiler until the top bubbled and crisped. That was it. No pancake mix, no waffle irons, just the broiler and a little patience. Kids loved it because it felt like dessert. Parents loved it because it was fast, and everyone loved it because it used pantry staples. During the Great Depression and even into the 70s, families relied on simple breakfasts like this to stretch groceries without giving up flavor. The sugar caramelized on top, the bread toasted just enough, and suddenly plain breakfast felt like a treat. You could find versions of it in old community cookbooks, school recipe cards, even homemaker magazines. Somewhere along the way, it disappeared under the weight of frozen waffles and cereal boxes. Cheese and tomato sandwiches were summer stacked between two slices of bread. Simple, juicy, and just the right kind of messy. A slice or two of cheddar or American cheese laid over ripe tomato slices, sometimes with a little salt, sometimes with mayonnaise, sometimes grilled until everything melted into something golden. But even cold, it worked. The acidity of the tomato, the smooth melt of the cheese. It was balance, it was brightness. It was a sandwich that never tried to be more than it was, and that is exactly why it worked. Some kids had it toasted, crusts crisp and corners dark. Others ate it fresh, just a quick assembly before the morning bell rang. Cheese and tomato was one of those sandwiches that looked like it came together in 5 minutes, but tasted like it had been passed down for generations. Today, it still shows up in cafes and comfort food menus, but for those who grew up with it in their lunchboxes, it is something more. It is summer in a sandwich, a reminder that even the simplest things can be perfect. The hot brown was what you made when you had leftovers and a little bit of pride. Open-faced, built on a thick slice of toast, then loaded with turkey and bacon. But what made it special was the Mornay sauce, a rich, cheesy bechamel poured over the top and broiled until it bubbled and browned. It came out of Louisville, Kentucky from the Brown Hotel, but it made its way to family tables when there was turkey to use up and dads wanted something more than a cold sandwich. It was warm. It was indulgent. And it felt like dinner, even if it was built from scraps. Some versions added tomato slices, some skipped the broiler. But the essence stayed: meat, cheese, bread, and heat. Working men who came home hungry could make one in 10 minutes. It was not pretty. It did not stack well. But it hit the spot and filled the plate. Sometimes that was all you asked of a meal. Country ham and red-eye gravy brought a bold, salty kick to the end of a long day, drawing on traditions that went back generations. Thin slices of country ham hit a hot skillet and sizzled until their edges crisped and their smoky scent filled the kitchen. Once the meat was removed, strong black coffee was poured into the pan to deglaze the savory bits, blending with a splash of water and a touch of butter to create the dark, rich gravy that gave the dish its name. The result was a sauce both bitter and savory, perfect for spooning over the ham or soaking into warm biscuits. In less than 15 minutes, the table held a meal that tasted slow, cooked, and soulful. Working families appreciated the speed while still honoring a Southern classic, and the sharp aroma of coffee and ham became a sign that dinner was ready. Each bite balanced salt, smoke, and a subtle bitterness, a reminder of farmhouse suppers where nothing was wasted and flavor came from skill and tradition rather than expensive ingredients. Creamed mushrooms on toast was what passed for luxury in the modest kitchens of the 1950s. Not luxury in the fine dining sense, but in the way that creamy, savory warmth could feel a little bit like being pampered, even if you were still in your housecoat and slippers. Mushrooms, especially canned or foraged ones, were cheap and shelf-stable, and a quick bechamel-style sauce made from milk, butter, and flour turned them into something decadent. You would slice up white bread, toast it until golden, and ladle the creamy mushrooms right on top. Maybe you would throw in some onion or parsley if the garden had any left, or stir in a splash of broth to deepen the flavor. It was earthy, filling, and soft around the edges. Breakfast that did not demand a lot, but gave a whole lot back. It was served to guests, to husbands home from night shifts, or to little kids who needed something nourishing before school. It was simple, humble, and completely satisfying. Brunch today might have the bells and whistles, but back then, this dish was elegance on a dime. Wheat germ and yogurt bowls were the health kick of the 1970s that snuck their way into forgotten cookbooks and quick breakfast guides. You would scoop some plain yogurt into a bowl, toss on a spoonful of wheat germ, maybe drizzle honey or sprinkle nuts if you had them, and breakfast was done in minutes. It was quick, packed with protein, and felt ahead of its time back when most breakfasts were still sugar-heavy cereals or toast. The health-conscious crowd loved it because it kept you full. Parents liked it because it was easy. And even the kids got on board, mostly because the yogurt cut through the plain, nutty taste of wheat germ. These bowls were everywhere in the 70s, showing up in homemaker magazines, diet guides, and those community cookbooks with spiral bindings. But like a lot of forgotten breakfasts, they slipped away when trends shifted. Now it is all smoothie bowls and protein shakes. Peanut butter and raisin sandwiches were the quieter cousin of the peanut butter and jelly. Less flashy, less messy, but full of charm. Instead of jam, you pressed raisins into the peanut butter, dotting each slice of bread like a trail of edible Morse code. The texture was everything. The chew of the raisins, the creaminess of the peanut butter. It was a sandwich you had to work through slowly. No drips, no stains, just that steady balance of nutty and sweet. For some kids, it was a favorite. For others, it was a compromise when the jelly jar ran dry. But for those who grew up on it, the peanut butter and raisin sandwich was a comforting constant. It felt like an after-school snack dressed up for the lunchroom. You do not see it much anymore, replaced by snack packs and squeeze tubes, but in a simpler time, it was a staple. And every now and then, when you bite into that combination again, it takes you right back to linoleum floors, carton milk, and the gentle crinkle of wax paper. Ham and cheese biscuit sandwiches turned leftovers into a satisfying handheld meal that tasted like a weekend treat even on the busiest night. Flaky biscuits baked from a can or quickly mixed from scratch rose high in the oven while slices of baked ham warmed in a skillet. As soon as the biscuits were golden, they were split open and layered with the savory ham and slices of sharp cheddar or mild American cheese. A few minutes back in the warm oven melted the cheese into a gooey blanket that glued everything together. The salty ham, buttery biscuit, and rich cheese made a perfect combination that required no side dish and no long wait. For families coming home late, this sandwich was both supper and comfort, a way to turn yesterday's roast into tonight's fast feast. Children grabbed them hot from the tray, and the memory of that warm bite remains an echo of efficiency and home-style pleasure. Ribbon sandwiches looked like something from a dollhouse tea party, but they came from a place of real effort. Thin slices of bread were stacked in layers, each with a different filling, maybe egg salad, then ham spread, then cream cheese and olives. Sometimes the bread colors alternated too: white, wheat, rye, stacked in neat rectangles and trimmed of crusts. When sliced, they revealed pastel stripes like a surprise inside. They took time. They took care. And they were usually made by someone who wanted the table to feel special. You found them at showers, receptions, and the occasional work luncheon. They were not filling. They were not practical. But they said something else. They said someone went the extra step. Someone chose charm over calories. For working men, these sandwiches might have appeared only on holidays or community events, but when they did, they left a mark. You might not remember the speech or the decorations, but you remembered the sandwich that looked like a checkerboard. A reminder that even simple ingredients, arranged with love, could feel fancy. Poached eggs on buttered rice were the definition of doing more with less. Leftover rice from the night before? Perfect. Crack a fresh egg and poach it gently until the whites were barely set, the yolk still runny. Place it over a small mound of reheated rice that had been stirred with a bit of butter, salt, and sometimes chopped parsley if the garden allowed. What you had was a soft, savory dish that filled your belly without emptying your fridge. In the 1950s, rice was becoming more common in American kitchens, thanks in part to wartime rationing, which had introduced families to global staples they might not have tried otherwise. This dish borrowed from that new familiarity, combining simple ingredients into something almost elegant. The egg yolk would soak into the rice, turning each bite into something rich and satisfying. It was also a favorite for older folks, those with tender stomachs, or families watching every penny. You did not need toast when you had this. It was warmth in a bowl. Quick cheese grits with fried egg was the Southern shortcut breakfast that filled diners and home kitchens when mornings were short, but you still needed something hot and hearty. You would cook instant grits, stir in shredded cheese, fry an egg on the side, and layer it all in a bowl. Breakfast was done in under 10 minutes, but somehow it stuck with you all morning long. Families loved it because grits stretched far, eggs were easy to get, and a little cheese turned the whole thing creamy and filling. Southern diners kept it on the menu for quick weekday breakfasts, but this one lived quietly in home kitchens too. Practical, simple, and comforting. You could find versions of it scribbled in old cookbooks, tucked between biscuit recipes and gravy tricks, passed down by folks who knew how to make breakfast work without much fuss. Somewhere along the way, cheese grits and eggs faded under the pressure of new trends. But back then, this breakfast quietly carried people through long days. Peanut butter and jelly was the monarch of all school sandwiches. Simple, sticky, and absolutely undefeated. A dollop of peanut butter on one slice, jelly on the other, pressed together until the edges sealed and the flavors melded. Grape, strawberry, sometimes both. It did not matter. It was the taste of childhood, packed into brown paper bags, plastic containers, or wrapped in foil that stuck to the jelly when you opened it. You knew what it was before you even saw it. It had weight. It had smell. It had presence. For many, it was the first sandwich they ever made by themselves. The one you never got tired of. The one you always counted on. The flavor that still makes you pause when you see it on a shelf. Some sandwiches disappear, others become legends. Peanut butter and jelly? It never left. If these forgotten school sandwiches took you back, leave a comment, hit like, and subscribe before the bell rings on this memory for good. Cabbage and sausage fry-up offered big flavor and a full stomach with almost no preparation. Pre-cooked sausage slices hit the skillet first, releasing fat and spice that would season everything to come. Thin shreds of green cabbage followed, sizzling as they met the hot pan and softening into tender ribbons that soaked up the sausage drippings. A splash of vinegar or a pinch of red pepper flakes brightened the dish, while a quick toss brought everything together in less than 10 minutes. The combination of smoky meat and sweet cabbage made each bite taste richer than its humble ingredients suggested. Served alone or with a slice of bread, it filled plates and satisfied appetites without straining the grocery budget. Working families valued the ease, but they also loved the hearty, old-world flavor that reminded them of meals once cooked slowly, now captured in minutes. The Turkey Devonshire was Pittsburgh's answer to comfort food sandwiches. It started with thick toast, usually white bread. Then came slices of roasted turkey, crispy bacon, tomato, and a hot cheese sauce. Poured on top and baked until bubbly. It was open-faced, served hot, and made you feel like you were eating something fancier than you actually were. It looked like it belonged on a diner plate under buzzing fluorescent lights. It was the kind of meal a tired father might throw together with leftover Thanksgiving turkey or deli slices. It was greasy. It was heavy. It stuck to your ribs. But it never left you hungry. It carried the mood of a city where winters were long, jobs were hard, and food needed to earn its keep. You might not have had the money for steak, but you could make this. And it tasted like someone tried. That was enough. Crispy rice cereal with sliced banana and evaporated milk was one of those fast, forgotten breakfasts straight out of government-issued recipe guides and frugal homemaker magazines from decades past. You would pour a bowl of crispy rice cereal, slice a banana over the top, and finish it with canned evaporated milk instead of fresh milk. Breakfast was done in under 10 minutes. Ready before the school bus pulled up or the factory whistle blew, it was practical, affordable, and quietly comforting in its own way. Families leaned on breakfasts like this when groceries ran tight, but everyone still needed something filling to start the day. Evaporated milk was shelf-stable, bananas stretched a meal, and cereal brought the crunch. You will not find this version on menus today, but back then, it was one of those small tricks that kept mornings moving without much fuss. Somehow, even the humblest breakfasts had a way of sticking with you, until they disappeared. Banana fritters dusted with powdered sugar were a breakfast treat that made even an ordinary Tuesday morning feel like a celebration. Bananas were one of the few fruits you could count on to be affordable, especially as trade routes opened back up after the war. Housewives figured out quickly that a ripe banana could stretch a batter and give it flavor, texture, and sweetness, all at once. The fritters themselves were little rounds or drops of banana-laced dough, fried in a shallow pan and dusted while still hot with a shake of powdered sugar. Crispy outside, soft and warm inside, like breakfast donuts without the weight. They were golden brown, slightly caramelized, and just messy enough to make kids grin from ear to ear. Some people added a pinch of nutmeg or a splash of vanilla, but the basic version did just fine. You could make a whole plate in under 20 minutes with pantry staples and 2 overripe bananas. Banana fritters were the kind of thing that turned leftovers into joy. That made them a classic. Cold rice with milk and sugar was the ultimate make-do breakfast pulled from the back pages of old community cookbooks and family kitchen tables when leftovers were all that stood between you and an empty stomach. You would take leftover rice, pour cold milk over it, Sprinkle a little sugar or cinnamon if you had it, and breakfast was done in under 10 minutes. It sounds plain now, but back then, it was practical, frugal, and good enough to keep you going. Farmers, factory workers, and school kids all started the day with simple meals like this when groceries ran low, but mornings never slowed down. Cold rice was easy to stretch, milk made it creamy, and sugar turned it into something that actually felt like breakfast. Some families tossed in raisins or fruit if they had extra, but most kept it plain and quick. You will not find this breakfast on menus today, but back then it quietly kept families fed with nothing but leftovers and a little kitchen ingenuity. Funny how the simplest meals fade away. Sloppy Joe skillet brought a sweet tang to busy weeknights when there was barely time to sit, let alone cook. Ground beef hit the hot skillet first, sizzling as it browned while the cook stirred in chopped onions and a quick sauce of tomato paste, vinegar, brown sugar, and a shake of paprika. Within minutes, the mixture thickened into a rich, saucy filling that perfumed the kitchen with a scent both savory and slightly sweet. Soft sandwich rolls were split and warmed while the beef bubbled, ready to soak up every drop. The sloppy name came alive the moment the mixture met the bread, spilling deliciously over the sides and begging for napkins. Families loved how it stretched a small amount of meat across several sandwiches, and children delighted in the messy fun of every bite. Fast, filling, and friendly to any budget, the Sloppy Joe skillet earned its place as a dependable working man's dinner that felt like a small party at the table. Drop your wildest old-school recipe idea in the comments, tap like if you're hungry for more, and hit subscribe so we can keep cooking up forgotten fun together.